What I got here is the Sony A1. It is a $7,000 camera and it might already be outdated. If you've been around this channel, then you probably know that I have been shooting with a camera that is called Sony A7S III. Don't worry if you don't know, it's like totally fine. But that camera was sort of like the pinnacle of, you know, video-centric hybrid cameras when it was released back in 2020. And it had all the features that I need to have in a camera, such as 4K 120, 10-bit video, dual native ISO, and all that good stuff that you need as a videographer in order to maintain the best image quality. After 2.5 years of using the A7S III, I kind of felt the need of having a camera that could take some better photos. Not that the A7S III is a bad photo camera in any sort of way, but it only has 12 megapixel in the sensor. This camera, on the other hand, has 50.1 megapixels, which gives you a lot of possibilities when you start to crop in on the photos that you take. And if you take a lot of photos, that is actually something that you will notice kind of fast when you compare the two cameras side by side. Now, fast forward to today, which is October of 2023, and I do not have my A7S III in my kit anymore. So I sold both of the A7S IIIs that I had in order to get this camera instead, which is the Sony CVE1. The downside with this camera though is that it is still sort of like the same camera as the Sony A7S III is, at least when it comes to the sensor. So you don't get a bump in the megapixels when you want to take photos with this camera. Vad sa du? Nej, men YouTube-videos. So in order for me to become a better photographer, I thought, why not invest in myself, right? Get a camera that will cover all the needs that I need in a camera. And the cool thing with this camera, in my opinion, is that it has everything that this camera, or the A7S III has, but also the photo capabilities that I wanted to have in a camera. So you have the 10-bit recording, you have 4K 120, you even have 8K 30 FPS in this camera. If you want to use that, I've only used it once, so it's not a feature that I'm required to have, to be honest. So after using it now for a little bit more than a year, I do have mixed thoughts on this camera. A couple of things that I really like about the camera is, one, that you have a really good sensor, it has a high megapixel count, and it is also incredibly fast. Oh, and when you go up to the electronic shutter, it is even faster. You can shoot over 30 FPS with it. Not that I ever really use that, except for when my kid is running around, but it's a great thing to have if you're doing a lot of bird photography or action, sports, that kind of stuff. But the thing that I like the most about it is that it works as a direct replacement to this camera, or my then Sony A7S III. Having a backup camera that is just as good in the video department and even better in the photo department than the camera that is my main camera is a freaking amazing thing to have. But ever since this camera was released, the CVE1 was released, which has a couple of cool AI stuff that you can use, but then you also have the A7R5, which has the flip up and flip out screen. I've been testing a bunch of different cameras throughout the years that I've been working as a YouTuber. I've tested the A6400, the A6700, the A7R3, and the A7 IV, the A7S III. Pretty much all the Sony cameras that has been released within the last 5 years, I have tested. And the body of this camera feels like the A7 III, which was released in April of 2018. Let's head back to the studio and talk a little bit more about this. I just want to take a moment and talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is Artlist. One of the most essential parts when it comes to making videos is to have good music and good sound effects. Without those two, it's going to be very hard to take your videos to the next level. And that is why Artlist is a fantastic service to have as a creator. Making a video interesting is about stacking up multiple different layers of sound effects to create this nice ambiance, but also combine that with the right piece of music to give it the right pacing, feeling, and vibe that you want to convey to your audience. And they've made it so easy on the platform to find those nice, chill, vloggy, lo-fi beats or those epic cinematic songs that you might want to have in your drone shots to make them feel a little bit larger than life. But it doesn't really stop there, because they also have plugins that you can use, stock footage, and even an editing software. So if you use the link in the description to sign up, you're going to be able to get 2 months for free. Check it out. The biggest drawback that I've noticed with this camera is two things. First off is this. For me, this is stupid. This is one of the things that I do not understand why Sony decided to put in to this camera when it was released after the a7S III. And I know there's been a huge debate about this back and forth, and I've been reading a lot of different comments online. People saying that, well, I don't want to have the flip out screen because I think it's better to have the flip up screen. Tell me one thing. So if you are, say, close to the water and you want to take this kind of photo, what is it called? Portrait, huh? And you're standing on the rocks. So how do you know that your photo is going to turn out good? Because when you lower it close to the water and you want to flip this up so that you can see the actual composition of the image, well, then there's no possibility. The amount of times that I have encountered that exact situation is ridiculous. There's so many times where I felt like, I will just like flip out screen so that I can take this photo. But no, I just gotta put it down there, burst shoot, and hope for the best. In my opinion, this camera should have been the one that used the same kind of flip out and flip up screen as the Sony a7R5 has, because that would have made this unit so much better. When it comes to the mode wheel here on the side, you have the burst modes and the timer, and then you have the different focus modes that you can use. Honestly, I haven't been using these as much as I thought I would, mainly because I have my camera set up so that when I press C1 on the camera, it doesn't matter which one I have, I turn off autofocus and then I can just use the manual focus. All the things that I got here is something that I don't need quick access to, mainly because I already have it when I customize my different buttons. The autofocus on this thing is great, but I wouldn't say that it's actually groundbreaking that Sony tried to promote it. I think it works fantastic, but I also think that the autofocus system on the a7 IV works fantastic as well. The second thing that I dislike a whole lot is the placement of the record button. It feels almost exactly the same as the a7 III. It's just such a bad placement for a record button when you're mainly using, your index finger to do things and shoot things and press record. Even when I'm holding a camera like this, I use my thumb to press the C1 button. After 3 years with the a7S III, my finger is going here all the freaking time. So it's very hard to revamp that muscle memory. So now that a year has passed and I've been using this extensively, one of the things that baffles me a whole lot is the lack of support with firmware updates. There's been one single update for this camera, and this is a $7,000 camera. There's been cameras that has been released with better software and AI stuff than this camera, but there has been no updates to this camera to get the same things as the new cameras, which I think is very strange. A camera like this, that is the highest of the highest end camera that you can get from the entire Alpha lineup, should be the one that is supported for a long period of time forward. But it's also my biggest complaint to Sony overall, the lack of firmware updates. I don't know about you, but in my opinion, I think that the a7S III should get a firmware update to have some of the new stuff that we know it can have. But right now it feels like Sony's just saying like, no, we're not gonna update, you're gonna have to buy a new camera. And I get that if they wanna make more profit, but I think that in the long run, what is going to happen is that they're going to shoot themselves in the foot and they're going to lose customers, because if I invest $7,000 into a camera and there's something better released in a year, then I would be mad at that company for not actually supporting this camera the way that I would like this camera to be updated. And as always, use the comment section down below because I would love to hear your thoughts on it. And would you buy this camera today or would you go for something else? Drop a comment. Thanks so much for watching. Really hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, do give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe.